What's up guys, and welcome back to my Pokemon Sun and Moon coverage video. I'm back once again, and today we are basically going to be talking about what new features that were introduced in X and Y might we see return in Sun and Moon. So, I mean, we'll talk about Oras as well slightly, but it's sort of what new stuff do we see in Oras and Generation 6 in general that might carry across to Generation 7, and what are we going to say goodbye to because it wasn't that interesting or that useful. You'll get the gist of it as we go along. I'll also take this moment to remind you I'll be streaming tomorrow on Saturday at 7 PM Greenwich Mean Time, or it'll be 7 PM, so it'll be 3 PM Eastern Standard Time since the clocks are slightly closer together now. But if you guys can join, that'd be cool. But for now, let's go on and look at these features and such. I'm going to start off by talking about the PSS, almost one of the biggest features, or pretty much the biggest feature, apart from Mega Evolution, introduced in Generation 6, in X and Y particularly, which was basically the expansion of the friend level of the Pokemon Center, connection previously, because obviously before was Generation 5, and you had to go to the top level of the Pokemon Center, or you had the C gear, I think it was, where you could do some stuff with people. However, it was just local and it wasn't online, as far as I remember. PSS, or the Player Search System, added that capability, so you could add friends and you could see them on the list, you could click on them, you could offer a battle, offer a trade, whatever, and it was very, very useful. It returned in Oras, so I very much expect it to return in Sun and Moon, although most likely will be an updated version of it. It will likely be on the bottom screen again, it'll be updated, it will have probably new graphics, a couple of features are going to be removed most likely, and we'll talk about that in a second, but the PSS is very likely to return. So, the friend screen is the main screen, that we'll get that still, and that's where you can battle and trade from. The battle spots, I expect that to return. It was present in Oras, and this is still going along now. Every month they release a new battle sort of competition for it. So I expect, since they're putting so much effort into that, I expect it to return there, because the battle spot was it was a fun thing to do. You saw everyone in the series that were road to ranked, or whatever. So I very much expect Battle Spot to return. Another feature that was added in it as well, very similar to Battle Spot, was Wonder Trade. I expect again that to return, because why would you not return it? All the streams, Wonder Trade Wednesday, whatever else people do. That's great for the Pokemon company, because it's a thing people can actually do. It gets the community involved, which is what they want to do. So I expect Wonder Trade to return again, albeit maybe slightly different. Maybe it won't necessarily be on the PSS, it could be in a certain building, but I expect it to be on the PSS, and it's pretty much in the same sort of style as it was before. The next thing is the Holocaster. This wasn't necessarily a PSS exclusive thing, but it was used to basically give out news and information on Pokemon events. I think it was used one or two times in the main storyline for X and Y, but I don't think it was used that much. Holocaster was used to communicate with the player, with the professor and some of your friends, but it was used sparingly. It wasn't a common thing. I did make use of it, myself, but then apart from that, it was used for announcements for Pokemon events or competition, stuff like that. It could return. It's possible it could return, but I feel like they will do something different for Sun and Moon, a different method of communicating with the other members of the story. And obviously they can just have notifications pop up on the PSS, really, if they really want to do that sort of thing for events and such. So I'm not going to bet on the Holocaster returning, because I didn't really see much impact of it. The GTS wasn't a feature of the PSS. GTS will return. We know the GTS will return, and it'll pretty much be in the same format as it was. The GTS in X and Y and Oras was the best GTS we have seen. We don't have to go to some silly building or the Pokemon Center to set up trades like that. You can just click on the bottom there, select Pokemon from your box, and just trade them off. It was very, very simple and such. O-Powers are another thing. They don't need to return like the GTS, but I feel like they will return in the PSS as before. Reasons for that would be, well, one, why not, basically. Two, it's not like they were a specific X and Y thing, you see. Two is, again, it encourages sort of cooperation with players and friends and such like that. And three, if they do that, obviously they have Mr. Bonding back to give you some O-Powers throughout the story, and that will allow them to actually tie it in to the storyline somehow, unless of course they're doing it before Oras, in which case they won't have Mr. Bonding and they have to have another way of doing it. But they could link it on that. Mr. Bonding can mention the Kalos region at some point, and then it'll be boom. Okay, this is after X and Y sort of thing. Then PR videos are the last thing I've written here for PSS. I don't expect the PR videos to return. They could, but they weren't a very big feature. Who actually, hands up if you actually put a PR video on and kept it updated, or whether you just did it once when you first went to Lumios and you were like, right, okay, that's it. I mean, a few people will have, a few people will have customized it very well, but most people will have simply just done it once and then not really done it again, because it wasn't something people checked out too often on your profile. Other things that are related to PSS were the two other features of X and Y, Pokemon and Me, and Super Training. I am not very hopeful for the return of these two features in X and Y, in Sun and Moon, basically. Why is that? Well, Pokemon and Me, it was a feature they promoted before the games, but it wasn't really a big hit, in my opinion. Because I used the Me when I was doing first and second playthrough. Apart from that, I didn't really use it. The mini games were nice, they were fun, but they weren't a feature I really would miss, I guess. It almost got annoying at some points when it made X and Y even easier than they needed to be, because you might just be, say you've trained a Pokemon up in Pokemon and Me, or not trained it but played with it, and then you're in that, in the Elite Four, whatever, and then you get paralyzed and oh look, your Pokemon saved itself from paralysis. Oh look, your Pokemon woke up from sleep quickly. It got really annoying, especially with the boosted experience as well, combined with the experience share. It made X and Y really, really easy if it was something you commonly use. Because if you played with every single Pokemon you had, so they were maximum, they would get loads of experience. The battles would be really easy, because sometimes they would, I don't know if they do extra damage, or I know they would recover from status afflictions. So obviously it's an optional thing, but I feel like they won't bring it back because it just flopped, really, because not many people would miss it if it left. The other thing is Super Training. Again, it's sort of similar. It did flop a bit. Again, not many people would miss it if it left. Yes, it was fun to play around with Pokemon and Super Training for a bit, but it wasn't really a feature you would need in the game. So I don't think it's going to return, but it's a possibility it could return, because they could keep exactly the same sort of style for Sun and Moon, PSS, and Me, and Super Training, and have them sort of just be extra options, because it's already all in the code there. They wouldn't really need to adjust it too much, so they could just carry on keeping on using it like that, basically. The next thing to talk about are battle types. There were 3 new battle types introduced in X and Y. A few of them came back in Oras, but we'll talk about all 3 of them anyway. The first one is Sky Battles. These were the ones in X and Y where you would find a trainer that was high up on a ledge. They would see you, they'd call down saying like, hey, hello, do you want a battle, or whatever, like that, and you'd have a battle up in the sky. Only flying type Pokemon or Pokemon with levitate could be used, if I remember correctly, so it was a bit different. You couldn't use every Pokemon. Everyone was weak to electric, basically. Everyone was weak to ice for the most part. So it's a different battle. There were only a handful of them across the whole of the Kanto region, and there wasn't a battle type you could access anywhere else. So it's really just a little. It wasn't really a big part of X and Y. It was just a little. Oh look, there's a Sky Battle here. Let's Sky Battle. Why not? Again, if it was removed, you wouldn't miss it at all, because there was only a few battles. They could return, could bring it back and just have it being these little battles here and there just for fun. If I remember correctly, it didn't return in Oras, possibly because they realised it wasn't really needed. It was just something extra they wanted to try out and see if people liked it. So it's unlikely for it to return, in my opinion, but it could, obviously. Anything could return, most likely, but it's whether something's likely to return or not. The next one is more likely to return, that is Horde Battles. And obviously there's a lot of Pokemon battles you'd have in caves or in grass or whatever, and you'd end up with 5 lower level Pokemon on the other side of your opponent, basically. Why do I think these are going to return? Well, one, they returned in Oras, so why bring it back in Oras if you're just going to get rid of it again? They were very popular as well, because for one, you can use it to find shinies. Shiny hunting via hordes is very popular, because you get 5 Pokemon once, basically. So it's 5 times as faster as just a normal random encounter. And also it can be used for EV training too. You can it's basically the fastest way to EV train in any Pokemon game ever. When Super Training was first, the first couple of weeks of the game, people were like, oh my god, Super Training, we can use Super Training and get EVs like that. Then people realised you could use Horde Battles to get some EVs there, and it was so much faster, because you'd get 5 times. Usually before, in previous Pokemon games, you'd have to EV train by battling wild Pokemon over and over and over. Now it's 5 times faster, and you know, why would you not do it? So I'm very confident Horde Battles will return, because they were a nice addition to the series as well, weren't they, guys? If you say, okay, if we took Horde Battles out of X and Y, they would feel different. We gotta be honest there. You know, it was nice to see a Horde battle with 5 Pokemon on the other team on the other side. It was nice and fun to see that, so I feel like Horde Battles are going to return. The final battle type X and Y introduced was the inverse battle, where, you know, all the type effectivenesses were reversed. So instead of fire being super effective against grass, it was not very effective. I liked this battle type. Unfortunately, I think there's only one battle you could have with it, which is the guy in a house, and you would battle him and be inverse. But I feel like they should, you know, incorporate this a bit more. Yeah, you could have a specific trainer type that says, do you want to have an inverse battle? And then you have an inverse battle with them. They could even add it to the online section, so you could have a single battle, a double battle, or an inverse battle sort of thing, or have a single, and then you say if it's normal or inverse. And that might add an extra edge to competitive, you know? Instead of just having this, you know, Pokemon competitive there, you could have competitive inverse, where all the types are, you know, reversed, people have to remember they're reversed, all these Pokemon are going to have different matchups for each other. I feel like it'd be really interesting to see in a competitive scene. That's just my, you know, my 50 cents. 50 cents? Yeah, 2 cents, isn't it? I don't know. But that's just what I think. If you guys feel differently, let me know down below, because of course it's a discussion video. You guys discuss with me, that's how we do it. So out of the 3 battle types there, I'm fairly confident Horde Battles will return. I don't think Sky Battles will, and I'm not sure about Inverse, basically. I'd love to see Inverse, but I'm not, I don't think it's going to return, but it's possible. Even if it's just a, you know, in a house like the same, you know, same going to last time. I don't know. Then, well, I guess we'll talk about the next biggest thing, basically, in Pokemon X and Y, Mega Evolution. Why should Mega Evolution return? Why shouldn't it return? Well, it's a huge part of the Pokemon franchise now. If you think about Generation 6 in general, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Mega Evolution, apart from like 3D or something. You know, it added depth to competitive. Instead of just having all these Pokemon, you have to choose which Mega Evolution you use, when you use the Mega Evolution. You know, if you leave it till later on in the battle, it depends on the Pokemon, of course. But of course, that's my opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean it's everyone's opinion. I'm not too integrated into the get it. Well, let's get it. I said integrated. It's so funny. I'm not too ingrained in the Pokemon competitive scene, so I don't know how they feel about Mega Evolution in general, but I feel like it's been a good addition to the competitive scene, and also it's been featured in other games as well. Most notably, Pokken came out today, and it's in that game, so it's very likely that it will come back there. Pokemon Rumble, it was featured as well, Pokemon Rumble World, as well as the latest Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. And also other stuff like Pokemon Shuffle 2. So it's been in most games that have been released since X and Y. So I feel like they almost have to bring it back, since it's such a, you know, a popular part of the Pokemon series now. And you want to watch out for tomorrow's video, because something is, you know, very important. It is going to be featured in there concerning Mega Evolution in Sun and the Moon, so be sure to watch out for that, keep it on your radar. But also, Mega Evolution allows for more hype to be built up to release of the game. For example, you can have Koro releases saying, oh my god, look at this new Mega Evolution in Sun and Moon, it's a Mega whatever. And also, you can have hidden Megas in the game. So just after the game comes out, obviously people are trying to find these hidden Megas, you know. It's always nice, in my opinion, to have a Pokemon game where some stuff is hidden. I don't want to know about all the Mega Evolutions that come out before the game's, you know, released. I want to have some hidden, I can try and find the Mega Stones for, and see, you know, stuff popping up all over the you know, all over the shop, basically, saying like, oh my god, look at this Mega whatever, you know, just either leaks or, you know, people finding out as the games come out. It would be really nice to see. The only reason Mega Evolutions might not be, you know, carry on in the Sun and Moon would be like, one, you have like not enough, I guess, space, you know. Obviously making more Mega Evolutions, obviously that's some people say for Generation 6, oh yeah, they only introduced 72 new Pokemon, but there were also this many Mega Evolutions, so it balances out. That's true. And obviously you could apply this to Sun and Moon as well. You could say, oh my god, you know, if they have Mega Evolutions, they're not going to be able to have, you know, enough time to make more Pokemon. I mean, at this point, if Game Freak want to, you know, are struggling with time for making, you know, to make enough Pokemon, they could just hire more people. You know, it's not a really huge point, so I'm pretty confident Mega Evolution is going to return, but I guess we'll have to watch this space for more. Then some other little things here, sort of, you know, as we go on. One thing was the Friend Safari I picked up. I feel like the Friend Safari might return in Sun and Moon. It was in X and Y, but it wasn't in ORAS. But I feel like it will return just to, you know, to go along with the PSS, because then obviously you can interact with your friends there. You can exchange friend codes and see what everyone has in their safaris. Again, it's another shiny method, so I feel like they're going to bring that back just because shiny Pokemon are a big factor in the Pokemon franchise now. You see shiny streams, you see people talking about shiny Pokemon a lot more now in Generation 7, so I feel like it's going to come back just for that, and obviously it's good interaction between people too. Then we have the Pokeradar or the Dex Nav. I've put these together because they're very similar. The Dex Nav is very unlikely to return since it's more of a hone thing, because obviously Dex Nav or the Pokenav was in Ruby Sapphire to begin with, so they sort of just revamped it for Oras. Pokeradar could likely return though. It was obviously in Generation 4 in Diamond Pearl Platinum. I don't think it was in Generation 5, but obviously returned Generation 6 here. It's just like an after game item, so it's possible they could bring it in and just throw it in just for people to use in the after game, or they could maybe try something different now. So it's really 50-50 whether the Pokeradar is going to return there. Then we have the Battle Maison. I feel like the Battle Maison is very possible to return, unless of course they introduce an alternative sort of after game battling method, because obviously there needs to be a way for you guys to actually get rare items like the competitive items like Choice Specs, Choice Band and such, and the Battle Maison was the way for that in Pokemon X and Y. So I feel like unless they introduce a different type of battling thing in the after game, the Maison will return, or something similar to the Maison will return there. Then the last two things I have to discuss here, one would be the rollerblades. I feel like the rollerblades are going to return in Sun and Moon because the game would feel a lot slower without them. If you imagine X and Y, yes, okay, you can have running shoes, but you have running shoes by default in X and Y, because obviously it just depends. The speed of walking just depends on how much you move the circle pad. So imagine if you can't move the circle pad past like halfway, so you're walking very slowly all the way across, very very slowly until of course you get the running shoes, in which case you can run at normal speed. But then that's it. There's no rollerblades. Rollerblades made it a decent amount faster, and most people would use rollerblades all the time since it was the default movement for the circle pad, if I remember correctly. So I feel like they got returned. There's no real alternatives for the rollerblades as well, and a lot of people are saying like, oh yeah, you could get rid of the bike and have a skateboard, but there's nothing you can get rid of the rollerblades for apart from like Heelys or something stupid like that. So I feel like the rollerblades are going to return, or something similar is going to happen in that sense. I'm not too sure. We'll find out though. Then we have the riding Pokemon aspect that was introduced in X and Y. It wasn't used too much. You can only ride Go-Go in Lumiose, Skiddo in the Skiddo farm, and obviously on the route as well, because you could get out, and then the Rhyhorn on the sort of the rocky route. I feel like that might return because it was a nice aspect to have, and I feel like they might be able to build on it a bit more in Sun and Moon. X and Y was obviously fairly, slightly primitive, so extra technology, extra time, they might have perfected it so you can actually ride Pokemon around the whole time. If you have like it might be a list of Pokemon you can ride. If you have one of them in your party, you can maybe ride them whenever you want as like a HM move, or just you go in the Pokemon menu and you just click OK ride or whatever. So I feel like that's going to return, and just have, if not that, just a few functionalities like in X and Y. Obviously, we had the Mamoswine as well for a certain route and stuff like that. I feel like it's going to return because they could really build on it and make it more effective. Then we have the experience share. I mentioned this earlier. The experience share is 50-50. It could either, yes, it could return because it's an option for the younger members of the game, younger players of the game, that could just turn it on and have like a nice ride through the game without being too difficult, because of course you could just turn it off if you want, and then it makes the game like, it's not like a thing where it's forcing you to use it. So it could either return just because of that, or they could say, nah, it was too easy for X and Y, it's far too easy, we're not going to add it at all, or we're going to add an experience share that was similar to the ones in the previous generation, where you just give it to one Pokemon. That's a possibility there. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the catching experience you get. When you catch a Pokemon in X and Y and Oras, you get some extra experience. Previously, you didn't get that. If you caught a Pokemon, that was it. So it was sort of like, yeah, okay, you caught the Pokemon, but you didn't get the experience for it. It's sort of just you could have killed it, but you caught it instead, so you get some experience anyway. I feel that was a really good idea. It was overdue. It was a welcome addition, basically. And I feel like because it returned in Oras, it will return again. It will just become a sort of a constant mechanic of the Pokemon game now, because it only made sense to give you some experience if you managed to catch the Pokemon as well, doesn't it, guys? But that was all the things I had to talk about. As I mentioned at the start, watch out for a special video talking about Mega Evolution and such in Sun and Moon tomorrow. I've got some ideas to share with you and to talk to you about. And obviously, as I said at the start, I will be streaming tomorrow at 7 PM GMT or 3 PM Eastern Standard Time. So after that video comes out, we'll be streaming a bit later on, hopefully. So keep track to my Twitter or go to my Twitch and follow me there if you want to keep updates on that. But for now, this is going to be it for me for today. I thank you for watching. I'll be seeing you next time. Of course, let me know what you think about all these ideas down below in the comment section. But that's it for me for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.